the Straw Hat Crew. Captain is Luffy, but without his crew, he would be nothing. Luffy even says it himself. He's got quite a bit of crew members over the years to explore the world, go on adventures, sailing on these vast seas, fighting, discovering new things. But other than fighting, every member of the squad has their own goals and dreams, and they all have their little thing they specialize in to add value to the group. I mean, one can say they basically live together. I mean, they're traveling from island to island together on the ship, sailing the seas. For example, crew members like Sanji is the crew's head chef. He can cook for the group. Crew members like Chopper, who's a talking animal, is the doctor. You got the literal cyborg of the group that's basically a shipwright, helps the ship get repaired if the ship gets damaged, their house, their home, which is important for sailing these seas. But the character I want to analyze today is Nami, the navigator of the crew. She kind of plays an important role because this world is vast and you need somebody that knows what they're doing when it comes to navigating the oceans. That's this character known as Nami for you. And let's analyze how strong she is, shall we? When we're talking about strength, these three in particular have freakishly insane strength, like Luffy, the captain himself, moving buildings, the superhuman swordsman of the group being strong enough to actually lift a building, and characters like Sanji having legs strong enough that can kick gigantic alligators, or one could say crocodiles, in the air despite him being that much smaller than it. So Nami's not strong on the same level as these guys, but as we go through this video, there's evidence, or one could say slight implications, that she's still superhuman. Even if these beings are just leagues and leagues above her, there's still some implications that she has some superhuman attributes a little bit. You know what I mean? You're going to see as this video goes on. Like, for example, if you was to compare Nami to a real life woman, an average woman's strength, this is just a random chart, guys. Don't take this too seriously, but I would think it would be similar to this. Like, she would still be above your average human, female still, by a lot, even though strength isn't what she specializes in, like these monsters over here. She will even fake being weak and hurt to where people would drop their guard. That's how she would get their treasure for Arlong and stuff, but too bad all this was for nothing. But then they realized, wait a minute, she's not really hurt. I mean, she used her womanly charms here to make them blush, then used this to get the jump on them so she can steal the Going Merry ship. This was back before she officially joined the crew. Her thievery kind of makes sense with her theme of her caring about money, because she had to go a long time of her life thieving. So of course she would eventually develop a somewhat, can say, a lust for money. She'll even remind you, if you want protection from her and her crew, you better pay up. She would have crew members crazy in debt because of her ridiculous 300 interest rule. She'll even charge the whole group without warning if you see her breasts. And she said that'll be 10,000 each person. So here's the thing. This world is big and has different type of people. One of them being fishmen, bad fishmen known as Arlong, kidnapped her as a kid, forced her to work for him, which is why you see this tattoo like this. On her, they made a deal that if she got enough money, she would be free. But it turns out he never planned on letting her be free, because she wasn't just working for herself, but she was working for her village to be free as well. So all this apparent patience just wasn't worth nothing, really. So all that stealing and being a thief was for nothing, technically. Nami basically having a nervous breakdown, stabbing herself. Luffy said, stop it. Self-inflicted scar. And that's when the famous scene comes in. Luffy, help me. And it was clear sailing from there, literally. That's when Luffy was ready to help. And she basically got cool with them and joined their crew and stuff. So yeah, she definitely didn't have it easy. And throughout adventures, naturally, she has went through her share of evolutions. First of all, physically speaking, she has to get stronger because she has to carry around a little bit more weight as the series goes on. So that eventually would have to help out her physicals. There was even this 2-year time skip where the whole crew got stronger after 2 years of training so they can sail the oceans better without getting defeated. But one thing that's like a common theme for her is holding this staff. This is technically what makes her strong. This is more what she specializes in rather than specializing in her muscles and stuff. These three, they started off like this in the early days so she can always hold them on her and then put them together to fight. Usopp, who's physically not really a powerhouse either, helped her out get upgrades, helping her improve her combat ability. Gave her staff a complete overhaul. The attacks change depending on how you assemble the individual parts. Don't be surprised in this video if you see her staff have different looks. That's why she's constantly getting upgrades. Usopp constantly upgrading them to give them more power. One could say this is temporary gear. We didn't really see her use this gear much. This particular gauntlet, for example, it has like an impact dial. One could say it produces impact. That's why in this occasion you see her use it to blast this being with a glove in his face. Impact, literally, and defeat him that way, this particular being, for example. But it does have recoil, and it shows that her physicals and durability isn't all that great because it actually hurt her hand like crazy. Then I already told you a second ago about how there was a time skip. She ends up getting basically energy projection, and it's pure scientific, doing weather-ish type of stuff, like electrocuting folks and good stuff like that. When the writer of One Piece, Oda himself, has Q&A and answers questions from fans, pretty much does confirm that Nami is pretty high up there in the hierarchy of One Piece characters when it comes to how smart she is. So in a way, she went through her fair share of evolution. She even used to use a knife. Heck, or one could say even pistols, a gun. Yeah, and after the 2-year thing, she got the staff from Usopp where it can stretch like this. Everything she can do before, she can do better. But what could she do in the past, before the 2 years? She can do funny stuff like shooting heat bubbles and cold bubbles and electric bubbles. Use them enough. One could say only a weather buff could figure out how to use this, so Nami's perfect for these weapons. This is during the earlier days where she kind of had to do physics mid-combat, basically, to figure out how the weather patterns and how stuff would work. To make a cloud, to make lightning that can shock beings that are way too much of a match for her physically. Like even beings that ate a devil fruit, yep, special fruits that give people powers in this universe. A fruit that made a being into actual lightning, blasted lightning at her. She can, thanks to this staff, she can use physics to redirect the attack with an electric current, thanks to her great knowledge over weather. Oh no, she did not react to lightning, by the way. She has to be able to predict the travel path. She can make illusions with this weather staff. So when you think you killed her, she can catch you off guard and you get an opening. You can see her make copies of herself thanks to these illusions. One can say basically go invisible. How are you supposed to know which one's the real her? She can do this while attacking you, so you don't know which one to die. Adding electricity to this can create a gust of wind. This was during the days Nami was still learning how this junk worked. And it can already do stuff like this. It comes in handy for when you want to launch beams high in the air, though. She ends up getting so good with her tools to where she can make basically weather indoors or clouds indoors to make it rain, like making all these clouds around all these people just for them to get shocked. So you basically get the idea. She can make mirages, shoot you with electricity, make clouds to shoot you with electricity, blast you with wind, blah, blah, blah. It's the same stuff. I don't want to go over every single occasion she's done this type of stuff. You get the idea. But she definitely has got improvements after the 2-year time skip to wherever what she can do before, she can do better, like eventually using weather eggs, and can do the same stuff like lightning blasts, making clouds. Later on in her career, she would get strong enough with her gear. Her gear would be able to make solid clouds that can physically hold you like a shield. Like in this particular occasion, she literally made a cloud that like acts as like a little road for them to ride on. So one can say with her staff, it gives her, one could say, blast power. So whatever she lacks physically, one can say because of these clouds and energy projective type stuff like a lightning projection, she has blast power basically. She can make snow clouds and clouds to take a shower. Oh my. In the world of One Piece, there's these things called emperors, the emperors of the sea, the mightiest pirates on the sea. One can say it's because of stuff like this, the reason why Nami's gear gets even better, because one of the emperor's weapons or servants, one could say, that is very powerful and helps Big Mom shoot energy projective type of attacks. You guessed it, the thundercloud known as Zeus. It's kind of like similar to her weather theme in this universe. It's a literal cloud that's a living entity. Because Big Mama's fruit can put a piece of her soul and stuff and make them a homie, but somehow still have their own free will. There was these things Nami would shoot out that would taste good to him. That's what made him interested in Nami. So one can say this is what made Nami even mightier as a fighter, because her standard gear keeps getting crazier because she has a literal living clouds entity servant, basically making this also a part of Nami's gear and increasing her power overall as a character, forcing it as a servant or servitude. To add on top of it, this living entity can be stored. The staff you see her carrying around can be stored within her staff. Because it's a combination of Sky Science and Usopp's technology, this being is inside of it. So it's like her standard gear, an alive piece of standard gear. So there's two ways to look at her. Her punching power or strength in general physically with no weapons, or her obvious blast power thanks to her gear and stuff that's not technically her strength, but just her gear, one could say. She's stronger than you might think. Obviously not counting gag moments where she be hurting the main characters and crap. Like, it's occasions like this where we didn't even get into the weather manipulation or blast power stuff, just straight staff combat, knocking out Marines. 2 of them in this occasion, for example. Striking beings this hard, sometimes some of these panels look gaggy, but yo, work with me, they weren't flying that far. We've seen her knocking out pirates from blows to the back of the head. When it comes to fighter Marines, we've seen her take them down too. She's one of the Straw Hats, so she can obviously take them down with hits, just like the rest of the crew. Beings like Buggy, she's encountered, she will slam this bag on him. Little baby weight feats like kicking katanas that far to Zoro, smashing windows with a kick. We've seen her block attacks from zombies. These feats right here don't necessarily confirm that she's superhumanly strong, but there's implications you could interpret it that way. When you look at some of these beings that have devil fruit powers and enhance their physicals with it, Nami has to face. During the Alabasta arc, there was this being that did this technique that has a devil fruit that rammed through walls with this much force and can do all this damage. But when this same being rammed into Nami, Nami was able to kinda get hurt, of course, but kinda slow this being down despite her foot being stabbed, shows her pain tolerance and will. Like there was a literal bomb she stopped with her bare hands and shows her pain tolerant. She's okay after 20 feet falls and was still able to stop the charge. Impressive feat for Nami's strength. Keep in mind, this same being that Nami's stopping in this charge, this same being can do stuff like this, inject herself, and buff herself up literally with strength enough to punch through pillars with this much power. And this is who Nami had to clash with to show Nami might be superhuman. Even if we assume she's way lower than Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy, she still can technically be superhuman and still be nowhere near them, if that makes sense to you. I mean, then you got feats like this that could be considered a gaggy type feat, but wooden stuff or pillars, we've seen her punch and break. The way it's drawn looks gaggy. There's beings that have the literal superpower to make themselves as heavy as 10,000 kilograms and can do this to dinosaurs with their weight. This same being that can make herself weigh 11 tons can jump in the air because she can make herself super light, but then make herself heavy, so her attacks are heavy, obviously, to crush you with 11 tons of force. Despite this being this heavy, Nami, along with somebody else, was able to hit this being so hard, even though she weighed that much, they were still able to hit her away. So Nami had the striking power to where if something that was heading downward was coming this way, straight down, Nami was able to hit so hard and redirect 11 tons to another direction while it was in the middle of falling. It was falling this way. Nami hit it right here, so then it went this way. This right here could be proof of her superhumanness or qualities. One of the beings that Nami had to fight, one of the members of the CP9 government agency, a being known as Khalifa, who was superhuman and can throw bowling balls with explosive power. Along with another agent, she can do this technique known as the rain kick so hard that it can pretty much go through buildings, go through walls, and cause this much collateral. You guessed it, Nami got in a fight with this being and she was able to withstand her kick. How is this possible for Nami? Showed how she blocked it here. Okay, in One Piece, there's like different ranks in the Navy. You got beings that are pretty low down on the food chain, like a petty officer, for example, like a normal Marine. They actually had their power levels tested. So like a normal Marine has a power level of 10. This being that Nami had to block an attack from, power level was way over 10, and it was 630, other members 820. Like the whole CP9 is just way above superhuman. Straw Hat members like Sanji that are way stronger than Nami, for example, even straight up call this being that Nami had to block an attack from superhuman, had superhuman power. So Nami blocking an attack from beings like this should not be taken lightly. So while it may be true she's nowhere near Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji, the monster trio or nothing, it's still implication she's still above a normal real life human because of anime and cartoon logic, possibly. One could say Nami has to be strong. I mean, she had to always hang around fishermen beings who are automatically stronger than a normal human at birth, just from straight genetics, stated here. And you see in newer arcs after the time skip, there was this fisherman she deflects an attack from, implied to take out some fisherman guards, but it's kind of hard to tell if this was a physical feat or did she use her energy for this. They've encountered a lot of non-human type beings that are superhuman that Nami has blocked attacks from. This being known as Ulti headbutted the captain, you know, the powerhouse of the group known as Luffy himself. If you had any doubts about her being superhuman, how the heck did she survive a hit from a being like this that was blitzing at her at full speed, enhancing her already superhuman strikes with this thing known as Haki, your outward manifestation of your will, making invisible armor around yourself to increase your hits? Nami miraculously survived this kind of hit. This hit was brutal. If this doesn't imply superhuman attributes, I don't know what does. You remember that time Sanji and Nami got their bodies, they switched bodies where this powerful being was switched into her weaker body, soul switching. Despite her body being a lot more fragile, even Sanji even mentioned it, she still can do crazy stuff with her kicking power when Sanji's using her body. Even though he was able to do this, he didn't mention that her body was delicate, but not too delicate to where it couldn't do all of this damage. And somehow Sanji's able to still skywalk, even though he's in a different body. You know, Sanji in his real body can basically fly by jumping on the air and stuff. He was in her body and her body was still strong enough, even though Sanji's the one controlling it, was able to kick this shark out with one hit, producing, one could say, superhuman feats. But when it comes to her fighting speed, it's implied she's not as fast as lightning. Evenel even said you won't be able to block another attack because he'll just throw it in a way she can't predict the blast pattern. All these CP9 agents can move faster than the eye can see. Nami miraculously avoids these attacks still. So she doesn't have monstrous strength, but there's implications that she's above your average human in real life, or one can say low levels of superhuman. Nowhere near Zoro, Sanji, and them though. But her main thing I would say she specializes in is her gear, her blast power, things like that. One can say this is not a real good way to understand how much blunt power she can produce, but her blast can produce electricity that can damage CP9 agents, that can increase their durability. And it kind of left her reeling, like she was kind of feeling folded. I already showed you the grid on how all CP9 agents are way above superhuman. Her blast can take out beings that have superhuman durability, speed, and everything, like Khalifa, using her Thundercloud's gear and illusions, all that stuff put together, was able to actually blast right through her, apparently. Bruh, it looks like she died. But nah, she's not dead though, but it looks like it. One could say this can give you an idea of her blast power. So whatever she lacks physically, she's physically not on the level with her. She still is able to block an attack from her, but Zoro and Luffy, the three powerhouses of the Straw Hat Pirates, to take it on, but Nami, how much blast power she can produce. Before the 2-year time skip, when she got better and newer technology, this could give you an idea of how much blast power these energy projective type of attacks Nami can produce, because we already know Luffy back in these early days, even before the time skip, can punch beings hard enough to where they literally go through city blocks and you level multiple buildings and level an entire city block with punches, causing this much damage. But Nami can damage something that can withstand hits from Luffy like this, implying Nami could also level a city block with her blast power if she just wanted to be destructive. I'm not saying she could level with her weather. Do you think she could level an entire city block with her blast power or destructive capacity? I think her lightning would be strong enough to go through one building, then it would travel to the next building and such like that. It would just have that much power to just keep on going, deleting it, if that makes sense to you. Does that make sense to you? But obviously she can't do this with her fists. She would need this. There was the super advanced pacifista. Nami has the gear and allies to be able to produce lightning. You know, her very own thundercloud, she can tell what to do to blast these higher versions of pacifista. So Nami has gear to help her hang in there with the big leads. Like, yeah, this pacifista looks like a fishman. It's not a fishman. She can use her thundercloud. She can summon at will, which is her personal servant, which is alive. She can blast it. After 2 years, during their many adventures, they came across these dragons, pretty durable, even Luffy even said it. After the time skip, like Luffy that's ridiculously strong. There's beings like Baby 5 that literally have the devil fruit to be able to turn any part of their body into a weapon at will. Got blasted by Frankie in this general tank mode. This girl right here, for example, Nami has the time and basically one-shot them. The element of electricity is crazy. At this point, I don't think physically she could do anything to him. Fighting these type of top tier beings after the time skip, it just makes sense for her to be able to hold her ground. And if you still have your brought up earlier, a literal living servant cloud entity known as Zeus, she can use as a servant and use in battle to attack you with. This is the piece of gear that can make her be able to hang with top tiers, even if she might lack physicals, because this entity was working with Big Mom. You know, this cloud has to be ridiculously strong because Big Mom's one of the strongest pirates in the world. That's why she's one of the 4 emperors. And this thing is basically Nami's. We've seen Big Mom herself blast Sanji's father and mess him up. Technically, couldn't Nami do similar since she has something like this under her control with her blast and stuff? Okay, so I'm gonna try to make this explanation short and sweet. Remember, Luffy has went through evolutions. Even after he got these new forms like this, Bounce Man, Luffy would eventually get so strong by learning new forms of Haki. He would get so strong that his base form would eventually start surpassing his previous arc's Gear 4 mode. So this new Haki training and stuff. Haki is where you can basically give yourself invisible armor, increase your strike. Because despite Luffy getting this strong, there was this being that Luffy clashed with. This is after his crazy training that gave him that kind of power up. I'm showing this for a reason. This character right here, for example, Luffy was fighting. Luffy literally said she was too strong. He was about to pull out Gear 4 against her. This same being that Luffy was about to go Gear 4 against. We clearly see Nami in this panel blast her, was able to blast her this hard. Briefly looked like she had her kind of sleepy a little bit, but even Nami admitted and said, wow, that hurt. We've seen on occasions like this when Nami gets annoyed at her and blasts this being again, damaging her because this girl made it personal against Nami. This is interesting. Nami's doing this to characters, even though Nami doesn't have the ability to manipulate her inner willpower like other beings can. This technique, you can manipulate your inner willpower. It's called Haki, and you can produce powerful attacks, make invisible armor around your fists and stuff. Nami's still able to damage beings that have this technique. Nami doesn't, and she still can harm these beings. One could say a big chunk of an island. One could say not the whole island, but a decent chunk of it, like this part of Dressrosa, several buildings, maybe a town's worth he folds with his punching power. Nami's punches or physical strength or muscles is obviously nowhere near this level, obviously, but with certain characters like Zeus being her gear and servant, one can say all this put together, Nami could be, like maybe she couldn't a mountain-sized boulder or something on Dressrosa. What do you guys think about it? You think her blast could level a mountain or more than a mountain, a large mountain? What do you guys think? She's got to be somewhere past that range with her blast power only, though. The emperor known as Big Mom has a lot of kids. We've seen Nami use blast to mess up Big Mom's daughter. Wano was a good arc because this being, Zeus, ended up being reborn, and this weapon that she always carries around ended up becoming a living entity that assists her in battle. It can shapeshift into like a baton to hit beings with increase her strikes and stuff. Yeah, Nami's making up the strength difference she might lack with these new weapons. Pictures like this feel appropriate. It feels like she's geared up to the T. But guys, you gotta respect the navigator of the crew, Nami. I hope this gives you somewhat of an idea of how strong she is. She might not be the strongest physically. Like moments like this, for example, are gag moments. She can't actually really hurt Luffy or Sanji, the powerhouses of the group, or Zoro, of course. These are just gag moments. But with her cunning, her fighting techniques, and gear put together, she's a nice threat. Even though I gotta admit, moments like this are funny. I guess the positive thing, if she's fighting a dude that's stronger than her, as long as they're male, she can do techniques like this. Before I get going, everybody, I gotta say thanks for the donations, everybody. Helps out a lot. Respect Nami. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos.